Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Jackson, you know the rules, and so do I.
That's right.
That's what the theme song. That's what the theme song says. That you know the rules, and so do I. So
that's exactly right.
And that's part of progress. That's actually the part of human progress. Is knowing the rules.
It really is. Well, yeah. I'm back in Florida, and you've been.
Is it raining?
It's absolutely sunny and beautiful.
So it went north of you.
Yes, we didn't have any real effect from the hurricane at all. We had a little bit of overcast, but no, it's perfect. Now, yeah. So we
are too. We're just having spectacular weather right now. This is This is kind of like summer, you know. I mean, not
September's my favorite. September is one of my favorite months in Toronto. It's so gorgeous.
Yeah. I have a suspicion that this is going to push right up to about Halloween.
Love it.
The reason I'm saying that is that when you get a lot of rain in August, it cools the trees, and
right.
Yeah, and because I'm sure that I look at oak trees. I have 7 huge oak trees out in right around my house. These are like 130-foot oak trees, really.
Yeah.
Big, like they just give you enormous amount of shade, but they probably have about 100 different sensors that kind of tell them when to get ready for winter, and you start seeing the leaves and the squirrels kind of know what the situation is because they're dropping acorns like crazy on our roof, and
yes.
But it's kind of interesting. You get a sense that certain summers are just going to push long, and I got a feeling this is one of them.
Well, that's great. I hope that holds true in Chicago too. So I'm due to come up there in about a month from now. So hopefully we'll hang in there.
Yeah, well we had a great Sunday last Sunday. We were live in front of 30 to 40, and was that a good aftermath? We had to leave and go to the airport.
It was really great. It was really great.
Yeah.
Man. And the fun thing is, we're seeing there's so much great comments on Facebook, and we were talking about Super Happy Fun Days, and people are posting up. They've had their Super Happy Fun Days and posting them up on Facebook to see. And I put out our episode that we recorded live. I just sent that out today to all of our realtors as a special for my Listing Agent Lifestyle podcast to introduce the Joy of Procrastination to all of our real estate agents as well, because that was a perfect thing. What was amazing to me is having I had before you knew this, and before Tom, one of the guys who was at the event.
Yeah, I remember Tom.
70 years old, and I knew this was just like made for him, because we had a conversation for the day before, and I've known Tom now for 25 years, maybe more than 25 years, and he's just such a guy who's in the right place. Like, he's one of these people that his profession of being in the real estate business and doing that and learning he's a constant student and loves to apply new stuff and marketing and the whole thing. And it's just been his blended life, it keeps him fascinated and motivated. And he was having, we were having a conversation that, at 70, he was trying to think about, should he, transition out, and should he, is he trying to figure out, has he got enough money to make it all the way through, and how, this whole thing, thinking that traditional retirement thought. And
yeah.
I said to him, don't, you are going to be blown away tomorrow when, because I was talking about the thing that is like so inspiring to me about being around you is, there's not many places you go with a 74-year-old guy who's got a 25-year plan and is at the peak of his professional career and climbing, not at the, not winding down and living on legacy kind of thing. You're expanding and growing, and it's inspiring. I always look at it because you are 22 years ahead of me, and that's always nice to see. It gives me like a future example of what you can look forward to in 22 years,
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of bushwhacking right now, right through the typical attitudes and mindsets that are related. And I just have to reference back to the use of Tom's word should. And if you start any sentence in your life with the word should, it's you're not going to think about it correctly. Because should is always referenced outside to other people's standards or expectations and everything else.
Right.
Should just because a should is in the dictionary doesn't mean it's a good word for you to use.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I don't think you and I have ever had this conversation about should and could. But I was
it's actually three of them. It's actually three of them. Should it's kind of interesting. I don't know how that actually happened, but it's should, could, and would. And should, could, and would. I don't care how you're using it. It's going to end up with bad thinking.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's really that's interesting, because what was the difference? And I just brought that into it right now. The thing that I was writing about and thinking about was the energy change when you use the word could instead of should. And it's funny how it feels more like a positive at choice, that you could do something. But what about would? Where does would come into it? I hadn't brought that into the...
Well, it's kind of like, what would you have done? Usually it's with,
in the past,
what would you do? What would you? But what I noticed with all three words, when you see how they're used, they're always kind of, you're not really taking responsibility for the situation. And what I'll pick on should first, because what I notice is a mistake has happened or things haven't turned out the way you want to. And you say to yourself, or you to say to someone else, well, we should have done such and such, okay? And my sense is that you're getting a chance to be kind of a critic in this situation. Well, we should have done that. But it doesn't actually lead to any learning or change of behavior for a future situation like that, as opposed to, we have a concept called the impact or the experience transformer. So if something doesn't work, I say, okay, well, things didn't work here, but what did work about what, and you get people to say, well, we were on time, we set up properly, there's about 5 or 6 things that we actually did right. And I say, okay, well, that feels good because it's not 100% wrong. And then I say, if we were in a situation like this again, what changes or improvements would you make so that what did happen doesn't happen next time? Okay, and people write that down and they say, okay, let's put an improvement game plan now for the next time we're in a situation like this. This is what we're going to think about ahead of time so that we, don't get blindsided next time, or we don't get surprised next time. And here, what's happening is learning in the moment. Should isn't learning in the moment. It's kind of like it's a downer. When you talk about should, everybody's kind of, yeah, we should have done that. We should have done this. And we should have done this. But it's not a creative. It's a critical. What I mean by critic, you're being a critic, and you're kind of disassociating yourself from the mistake, but you're not actually learning from the mistake, such that you will now change your mindset, change your behavior, change your way of organizing for the next time you do it. That's I always found people use should all the time never improve.
Right. That's interesting that you're using it as thinking back on the past too, because when I was thinking about it, I was looking at it as looking at the future, right? Like the difference between could as a something
the difference between what should you do, but I should do. I should do this. It's almost like there's that sense of, it's almost like but it is a sense of bringing something. It's something that some obligation or some kind of commitment, I think, that you have, that I should do this, but it's not as fun as I could do this. Could feels like new paper, like a new thing where it's possibility kind of thing. Well, I'm going to, I think I'll think this through a little bit and show that these are these are words that are very, very low in energy, nutrition, and muscle.
Yeah. I think you're right.
They don't give a lot of oomph to if you're thinking or if you're planning. These three words kind of use energy. They don't provide you with energy.
Yeah, that's what's aware is that it's really an interesting thing about the energy of words like that. Like what we discovered about brainstorm.
Yeah, well, words
in terms
are,
of like getting into action,
every word has a purpose, okay? And, that's what my feeling is. When I've got this huge wall right here, I'm looking at it behind me right here, and it's got the Oxford English Dictionary, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19. Well, there's 20. I should have known that when I got to 12. There's
you never should have done anything, Dan.
If they had 12 volumes and there were more, it wasn't going to end up at 19. It's going to end up at 20. Right. So anyway, and it's not a handy dictionary, because and the reason is it'll have words where it'll have 3 pages of possible explanations or uses.
Right.
But what it is, one day I discovered it's the history book of words. It's the history of a word. This is, and that is fascinating to me, how a word was used, in some cases 400 or 500 years ago, and some of them, because they come from Greek and Roman words, they go back a couple thousand years. And I just find it really, really interesting, but the word was created because there was a need for it. Or it was kept, like a word came along and it was kept because it allowed it. And my feeling is as vocabulary expands, in other words, you have more words, your ability to think different thoughts, your ability to communicate in new ways, your ability to create in new ways actually expands, and so I find that really interesting. And I'm not a texter, as you know. And as you know, that I'm a Dean Jackson cell phone user.
Right, exactly. The special.
What that means for you listeners, that the only person I use my cell phone to actually talk to, is Dean Jackson, and the only person that I use my cell phone to text to is Bab Smith, my partner.
Yeah.
And that's sufficient. I don't feel like extending these capabilities to any other.
Right.
To any other humans. I'm not extending this to any other humans. I'm satisfied with the two that I'm engaged with. And and but the big thing that I noticed with some people, they'll get text, and the use of the English language seems to be sort of impoverished.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They don't even spell the words out completely, and
right.
And everything else. And I said, no. So when I text Babs, it's like full paragraphs. It's like full paragraphs. Everything's grammatical. I use the complete words and everything like that. Yeah, because I like the language. I feel rather fortunate that I ended up with English being my natural language, because it has so many words.
Yeah.
Just about twice as much as any other. Just about twice as many right now.
Well, it's so funny how it is the words that, they can make such a difference. I remember hearing years ago how Eskimos have so many words for snow, and we have one, because they have different words for snow that are like all the different kinds of snow, that there's many distinctions that are important if you're an Eskimo, and that we only need one. It's just snow.
Yeah, and I think they also have a lot of time to think and talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are we going to talk about today? Well, let's talk about this kind of snow.
Yes, exactly.
We talk about the experience. We learned how to talk about the experiences that are make up our life, and also what's important to us. I'm very future. I'm very future oriented generally as a person, and also by the very nature of what I do for a living, future. So I found lots of different ways of talking about the future that would be radically different than, say, one of my siblings. I had 6 siblings. I have 5 siblings left. And what I notice when I get together, I have a lot of different ways of talking about the future and checking out the future and comparing futures than they do, because for the most part, they kind of have the future that's been locked in place for a long time, and there was no need to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you look at, that's, well, you have one older now and 2.
No, I have 3. I have 1, 2, 3 older and 2 younger. Yeah. So
okay.
83, 80, 78 or 70, I think 79, 80. And then I have 66 and 65, I think, somewhere like that.
Wow. Yeah. Now,
but when you get together, none of them are working. None of them are.
Right. I was just going to say, they're all on that traditional, they took the traditional retirement path. Huh?
Yeah. And I follow my father, because my father worked full time, and so I'm really the only one. Well, I have a brother who's a consultant, so he's sort of a halfway creature, and he's actually a terrific acoustical engineer. He around machinery especially, he can do wonders with, if there's a sound that's coming. He does work did work for many years with automobile companies and air conditioning companies and motorcycles and things like that. And, they'd have a sound that they couldn't figure out what the sound was, and he'd figure out what the sound was. And it wasn't a sound they wanted, so he had to figure out how to some vibration. Because, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, for about 25 years it was Harley, and Harley is known for their sound.
Wow. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. I was thinking about, I had a conversation with Tom after you had left, and what it was just so energizing for him to think now about never having to think about like winding down, I think it was really rejuvenating for him, because we had been talking about this idea of immigrant thinking too, of really getting, I don't know whether you were in the room when I was talking about that, this idea of
we were talking about the immigrant one,
feeling it back to leaving everything behind and only focusing then on the bigger future.
Yeah. Actually, we went to lunch right after that discussion at your event, and the person sitting across from me his parents were born in Iran. He was born in Yemen. Yemen. Then they moved to Saudi Arabia, and then he couldn't get married because he wasn't, he belonged to another religion, and so he couldn't. Not only could he not get married, he couldn't let anybody know that he actually belonged to this religion. And he got married in Georgia, not U.S. Georgia, but the Georgia near Armenia, and it's sort of used to be a Soviet, one of the Soviet countries. And then he came to Canada and lived in Vancouver, lived in Halifax, and now he's in Toronto. And we were talking about the immigrant advantage that and with him, he's made lots of different moves. And in each case, he could only take that which was going to be valuable for the future.
Mm-hmm. It really is. I mean, the more it's really to make that, to be able to make that choice in place is really where the mental skill has to come in, right? Because by doing, when you are physically immigrating, when you're physically moving to a new location, you've symbolically also, as well as in reality, you've cut yourself off from the environment and the people and the patterns and the routines. And physically relocating is a new beginning. But being able to do it and stay where you are, that's a little bit of a different thing.
Yeah, well, here's an interest. I was going to ask you this because you kind of have an annual migration between Florida and Toronto, between Orlando and Toronto. So what comes north, and I'm suspecting, of course I know this, that Orlando is is your headquarters for the solar system. I think for your work in the solar system, it's actually Orlando.
Yes,
but
exactly.
Then you spend a significant amount of time in Toronto during the warm season here. So when you've got used to making this trip, what comes north with you, or what do you have north when you get there that makes it feel like home?
Yeah, my relationship.
No, I'm asking you the question. I'm asking.
Yeah,
I'm asking you the question. You have your relationships and you have your capabilities.
That's exactly right. I don't have physically, like when I I had a home in Toronto, in Georgetown. Was sold that. Now when I come, I'm at the Hazelton in Yorkville, and I come with one suitcase and my MacBook and my iPhone, and that's really it. I don't have any of the physical things. It's really, yeah, but yet I'm tapped into. This is the thing, is that I'm connected through Cloudlandia to everything that I do, regardless. It's funny how nothing really changes with your my physical presence being anywhere. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
I'm noticing. Yeah, that's really, I look at this, I really enjoy the rhythm of my life right now being sort of a school year, an academic year kind of focus, where I get into that routine, that kind of like September till June is kind of Florida based, and mostly that's where everything kind of happens. And then the summer, I go on my summer tour, and I'm in Toronto, London, Amsterdam, Sydney,
Australia.
Yeah, I go to Australia, and then back to Toronto. So kind of like from the beginning of June till the middle of September, I'm basically out of Florida and either in Toronto or somewhere else in the world.
Yeah.
And that sense of, I had an interesting conversation with James Schramko about, I don't know whether you've ever met James Schramko.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Okay. He's a really great friend. We're doing a podcast series with him where we just recorded episode 5 of 25 in Sydney there. So every year when I go, we record a new episode to kind of like an annual catch up on things. And what we were saying is that this travel, in the way that I do it, of sort of building community kind of in the places where I go, to know that like Toronto is like a home base, in a way that all of the familiarity and the relationships and the things that I have established there, and London and Amsterdam and Sydney are all like really part of my world map. That's
Yes.
all like my that I have relationships and familiarity and equity in those places, in a way that you establish by setting up some long-term sort of established history there, and I enjoy that more than I enjoy going to new places all the time,
Yeah, I'm exactly the same way, and
Yeah.
have been for life. I've got places where if we go to Soho in London, so we really like them because we go to theater a lot, and it's a very lively place. There's a lot of street action. There's a lot of relatively, by London standards, cheap good eats. Like you can go out and I was thinking about this, and I want to bring this up as as a fundamental topic, because we've there's been this conversation probably for the last quarter century anyway, that there are certain people who operate globally, and other people operate locally. And I was thinking about that, and I said, if I took a look at the person who somebody says, well, he's sort of a global person, he kind of thinks globally. And I was trying to see if that was actually true. And you're a good example because you've got these centers that you circulate among, and I do too. I mean, so every year I go to London, I go to New York, I go to LA, I go to Scottsdale, Chicago. I go to a lot because it's the center, and outside that, nowhere else. I don't really go anywhere else. So I've got this circuit.
Right.
Mine's not quite as doesn't stretch west as much as yours does, but but when you look at it, if I looked at for example, in London, if I were to track myself for a week in London, how much of the city do I actually see? And that's, London is vast. So I just see, where I can walk, and I have sort of some routes that I go. So it'd be a fairly small area. New York City would be the same. In LA, I really don't go to LA. I go to Santa Monica. And then in Phoenix, when I'm in Phoenix, I don't really go to Phoenix. I go to Scottsdale. And if I took all the areas of each of these 5 or 6 cities yourself, you could do the same thing and just, aggregated them as, how much square miles. It wouldn't even make up, it would make up about as much room of, Toronto, south of Bloor, from, but probably from the beaches to Dufferin, which is what my Toronto is. My people say, Toronto, you live in Toronto. I said, well, kind of,
kind of.
I don't much, once I hit the Hazleton, I'm at the frontier, I'm on the northern frontier.
That's right. And that's so funny because I often joke how when I'm in Toronto, there are sometimes weeks where I don't leave the island, which is I leave from
Yorkville. You don't leave
Yorkville, right there, right from Scotland to Bloor and from Avenue to Bay.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah,
that's the world.
So the fact is that even though you have this network of of cities that in some cases can be halfway around the world, Amsterdam to Sydney has probably 12 time zones, easily 12 time zones. And but the truth of it is that in Sydney, in Amsterdam, in London, you're only in a very, very small area that you would call Amsterdam or London, Sydney. So in fact, you're very local, and I would say this is all the people who are local. What I'm saying about the two of us is actually true about them too. They don't live a global existence. They live a local existence in a number of different places.
That's true. You're absolutely right.
And when people say they think globally, I don't know what that means because it seems like an abstraction. Because everywhere I would observe them, they're actually acting locally, and they're actually talking to local people. In other words, in Sydney, you have people and they're your local people, and it's the same with me. I don't know any global people. All the people I know are global people with reference to a particular place. So I was just trying to.
It's a different a way that you experience it too, because I think about Taki Moore, who you also know, as a example of I look at Taki is really a true vagabond in a way that he's traveling the world, and I mean the world with his family, going to really off the beaten path places and really experiencing more of a global kind of environment, being in Indonesia and Morocco and I think he's in Croatia now, and just experiencing full immersion, kind of these being in local all these different kind of cultures. Even I look at the places that I talk about, like I mean, London and Amsterdam and Sydney are all very metropolitan, Western sort of culture, very similar, but I'm not going somewhere where I'm riding an elephant or, eating or going in huts and things like that. I'm not an adventurous global traveler.
Yeah. I'm just questioning because I think global is a Cloudlandia term that is descriptive, but you don't actually experience it. I came up with a distinction because I knew I was going to be talking to you, that we tend to only deeply remember mainland experiences, not Cloudlandia experiences. We don't actually, we have a Cloudlandia experience, but we don't really remember it. We tend to treasure mainland experiences, not Cloudlandia experiences. We're going back to this difference between the digital world and the actual physical world, the actual analog world, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe one of the things that as people have more and more digital experiences, or more of their day is taken up interacting digitally, that there builds up a need to have an increased variety of mainland experiences to sort of balance it off.
Mm-hmm. It is really true. I kind of
or you're going to be kind of crazy. I mean, if you're only in Cloudlandia, my feeling is that you're going to be probably in a state of high anxiety. And if you're only in the mainland, you're probably going to be in a state of high stagnation.
Oh, that's well put. Yeah, I was just had a friend. I haven't connected with him since he did it, but each year he does a silent retreat. So did a 4-day silent retreat, which was so it could have been like any 4 days for Dan Sullivan, but the 4 days.
What you're saying, for me to actually have a retreat, I got to do something other than what I normally do.
But this was something where he went to this place where he, it is true silence, no electronics, no speaking, just literally just your just your thoughts and journaling and that sort of thing. And he was saying how he always comes away from that with this immediate, like after the first several hours, to get this total sense of disconnectedness from the electronic world, but totally connected to the real world,
Yeah.
And I find myself at sometimes I'll see like scenes from movies that were from the 70s or, something where, even in adult life, you look at all the whole series of Seinfeld episodes that there's no influence of the of being connected there. But I find myself sometimes yearning for that sense of disconnection. I was describing when we were together last weekend to the group the idea of the Delta Hotel, the going to the Delta with the fireplace and just sitting there and journaling and reading and being so there was no cell phone, no internet, nothing. You feel like you're really off the grid. I can't remember kind of the last time I felt that kind of disconnection.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. I'm reading a long series. This person has many books, and he's a psychologist. The writer is actually a psychologist, a practicing psychologist from Los Angeles by the name of Jonathan Kellerman, but he's also a novelist, and he writes murder mysteries where the neat little twist in all of them is that he's a retired from practice child psychologist, and he links up with a homicide detective from the Los Angeles police. And what gives it a twist is that they talk back and forth about the cases they get involved in. And but he started writing these he probably started writing these in probably 25 years ago. And I sort of caught on with the last ones, and I read about 5 or 6 that had been written probably a year difference for the last 5 or 6 years. But then I decided to go back to the beginning of the series when he first started. And what's really noticeable is that the two of them, both the psychologist and the homicide detective, periodically will have to check up on something, and they'll pull off to go to a payphone.
Yes, right.
And there's nothing, I mean, the writer isn't acting as if there's anything strange about that, because he's writing as things actually are in Los Angeles right at this particular time. If you want to make a phone call, you go to a payphone to make a phone call, and that's normal. And now, normal is something
I think,
else.
I was thinking about that the other day, that if there was actually doing a scavenger hunt right now, if you had to take pictures of things on your iPhone, I think a scavenger hunt item would be to find a payphone.
A payphone, yeah.
I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw one in the wild. That's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I'd be hard put to say the last time I saw a payphone. I don't know.
They were everywhere.
Yeah, and you always knew where they were. I mean, you could, you could plan your trip throughout the city. That if you were going to have to make phone calls as you're playing through the city, you would know where a bank of them, ones that worked.
Yeah, they had a roll, a $10 roll of quarters. You were prepared for it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. Teresa Easler, one of our coaches, Teresa.
I do.
Teresa has a farm in sort of the northwestern part of Lower Michigan. Michigan has 2 parts, Upper Michigan, Lower Michigan. So it's in the northwest part. Quite a distance from Detroit.
Forgotten Michigan. The part
it's sort of it's farm country. And she has 2 sons who are now, I think one of them's almost 30 and the other one is, late 20s. And they were out, and they didn't have their cell phones with them. So she said, well, there is a payphone up here. And she says, go make just go there and make the payphone. He came back and he said, I can't use it. And it was a rotary, it was you had to rotary. And he said, what is it? He said, I've never seen it before. He didn't know how to use a dial. It's kind of funny.
Right.
Dial. What's a dial? I mean, what's a dial? How do you dial something? And we use it. So it's really interesting. And one of the things I just happened to get into a conversation with my team on this, and I said, what I've always prided myself on, because I've been, around the world, and I've traveled. I've been in Korea, Japan, and I've been all through Europe and everything else, is that when I get to a place where I'm going to spend 3 or 4 days, how fast I can kind of understand what is normal in that place. Okay. Because the one thing about it, there's 7.6 billion people on the planet, right now, and they live all over the planet. But wherever you go, and that's the place they live, that's just normal life for them, even though it may seem very strange to you.
Right.
It isn't strange to them. For everybody who lives where they live, their life is normal, even though that would look really strange to somebody else.
Yeah. I saw there was a TED Talk. I think it was a TED Talk by this woman who's created this visual database of all over the world by where people rate themselves in terms of lower income, middle income, upper middle, however they would define where they are. And what it is a visual database of where do you sleep? And there's pictures of beds, they take a picture of your bed in all over the world of people who would consider themselves middle class kind of thing, or people who would consider that they're more affluent. And it's amazing how across the board similar it is. Like how, we have this vision of some areas of the world have like poorer, on the whole, populations than, say, what we are used to in Canada and the U.S. But when you take this into account and you show us your bathroom and show us your bed and show how do you brush your teeth or whatever, the whole like real life living things, how similar it is across the economic kind of spectrum, how similar an affluent bedroom in any other country is very similar to ours, or a middle class bedroom or bathroom, or anything. And even the lower income things, some of the things in the U.S. are very similar to other areas.
I think
interesting
and I think this is where the proliferation of visual communication has made a huge impact, in the sense that even if you're in a lower economic class, if you can see how the next economic class above you lives, that might be one of your aspiration points, that you aren't there yet, but you can take on certain physical and visual aspects of that person's life.
Yes. Yeah, that's really, it's almost it's almost like in the scorecards, Dan, how I find that often when people do one of our scorecards, that even knowing that column 4 exists is an eye opener. Yeah.
I have one that's going to blow your mind when you come in a couple of weeks, because I've found a highly visual way to actually show the impact of a scorecard and this really, what it does is it actually compares. You've seen it because I've sent you the worksheets for it. So if you've looked into the package of worksheets, it's a worksheet which is called "Where Are You?" Okay, and it just shows you. But for example, one of the comparisons, I said, "Are you more influenced by thoughts of scarcity than thoughts of abundance?" And then the range could be 1 to 16, and there's a reason why I do that. If you look at it, or are you more do you find your thoughts being more and more attached to the past or attached to the future? Would you characterize your work more as transactional or transformational?
Right.
In the way that you think about being successful in the marketplace, are you more into competition or collaboration? So
Mm-hmm.
and so what it is it's it's really, really interesting. But what I'm pointing that if you have a really instant feel for who, not how, it's because you have a sense of abundance, you have a sense of the future, you have a sense of transformation, you have a sense of collaboration. If you're about scarcity and you're about the past, and you're about you're about transaction, and you're about competition, probably you aren't going to be into who, not how.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. I got I have the package.
No.
I haven't had a chance to look through it yet, but I'm
yeah.
Now that you describe it, I'm anxious to.
Yeah, you could see how I filled mine in, and then you could instantly see how the whole thing fills in. But one of the things but what we're talking about here, and really the whole essence of the Joy of Procrastination, is that the more you can understand that the breeding ground for any kind of behavior is really your mindset towards certain things, I mean, some people would say, how can you, consider that your year actually consists of being in 6 different places? I mean, that's not normal. That's not a normal thing. Well, well, it is a normal thing if it's normal for you.
That's true, isn't it? I mean,
but it's not but it's not a normal thing if it's abnormal for you. I mean, but that's just a function of mindset. I mean, it's just a function of what's normal or abnormal is strictly a function of mindset.
Well, that's true because, it's so, London, even if you take that as an example, the very first time that I spent time in the city of London was the first time that I went, and you and Babs were there when we walked.
Yeah,
all
we
over,
went out to. We went out. We walked.
Walked all over the city. All over Soho.
We walked way too long to get to a bookstore we didn't find very interesting when we got there.
Right. Exactly. But that was, and now coming, 6 years later of having been, back every year, it's more and more, normal. I know the moves. I know the stuff. Nothing's normal until you experience it for the first time.
Can I tell you how I knew? So this was our 20th year of going to London, at least once a year, sometimes a couple times a year. Yeah. And this time I was really on my Kindle as we were coming in from the flight over from Toronto. I was about halfway through a really gripping murder mystery story on my Kindle, okay? And so the moment I got into the limousine to go downtown to Soho, which is a bit of a hike, I got in the car and I immediately got my Kindle out. And the first time I noticed that we were in London was where we were half a block away from the hotel. But London is fantastic at night. London, you come right into Knightsbridge. Harrods is there. You go past Buckingham Palace. You're on Piccadilly and everything else, and it's glorious. I mean, and everything else. Yeah, but I've seen it. That whole route is route is normal. But I was deep into my novel, and I was saying, well, you've really normalized this part of your London experience. Well, at least this part of the experience, you've normalized it. Yeah. And that's what we do, is that we normalize things when we say there's really either this is a very comfortable known for me, in other words, this is and it's actually a comfort to me that that I don't think this is unique or exciting. It's neat. I'm 5 time zones away from home, but this is as normal as driving from Pearson to my home in the beaches here in Toronto.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So,
but the thing about and here's just a little bring back, because the greatest comment that I get from listeners to our podcast, they say, you're never quite on the topic of the title of the podcast, guys. You're never, every once in a while, I get a feeling, this is actually about joy and about procrastination. But they say, I can't leave it because I don't know what you guys are going to talk about next. And so
exactly.
But I think this feeling of being able to move from one state of normal to another state of normal has a lot to do with, the fundamental issue of procrastination. And that is, for me to see a goal that's bigger and better is a normal experience for me. And for me to do, in our strategic coach terms, an impact filter which says what I want here and why it's so important, and for me to give that impact filter to other people who then take control of it and then do all the activities to get my bigger and better goal, that's a normal activity for me. Okay? Okay. For me to see a new and better result in the future, and then commit myself to doing all sorts of new and strange and uncomfortable activities, that's not a normal activity for me, and I will resist it. Namely, I will procrastinate.
Yes.
Until I do my impact filter and work around it. So all we've done, you and I, because we're lifetime at this, is that we've said, what is a normal way of being really ambitious and really successful and really growing, but just staying within the framework what we do best.
Yes. I have, and as getting it as much to talking as we can to conversation.
Yeah.
I shared that with Ilko de Boer in Amsterdam. We're also recording a periodic podcast once every year when I come to Amsterdam, and that was one of the things that we talked about, and he was texting me.
This is the first time that I realized. This is the first time I realized that you're having affairs on this side.
Oh, that's so funny! I love it.
I don't count Joe. I don't count Joe. I'm kind of fair outside of Joe. But wow. I'm going to have to think this over.
I'll have to send you our conversation with Ilko, because we had a great conversation, and one of the things we talked about is this idea of talking. And so he was texting me this week that
I'd love
really
to
embracing that idea
talk
as the thing.
Yeah, and I have to tell you, my feeling is that our ability, because I want to talk about this in the coming podcast. That I think that we are the human race is now going to use the threat of artificial intelligence as our next great enemy that we're going to surpass. I think artificial intelligence is going to be more and more in our consciousness as something that we're not going to allow it to take over. And I think that this is going to start to grow more and more. And because they're threatening, it's going to take over everything. You're going to be worthless. As a matter of fact, there's no use. The transhuman people say, unless you decide to become half machine, there's no future for you. And I think we're going to use that as an existential enemy. And we're going to continually develop everything that's unique about humanity that can never be programmed. I think that's where and conversation is one that I just don't think artificial intelligence is ever going to pick up on in the way that we do it. I mean, they've got these cases where somebody calls in and makes an appointment and you can't tell that it's, but that's like checkers, that's like checkers. That's not really a big thing. So anyway, I'd like to devote one because I think this is a highly topical subject right now, this whole thing of artificial intelligence. But I think conversation, especially the way we conduct them, it's be very, very difficult for an AI to actually program what we just did over the last hour.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. Yeah, that's that will be good because we can tie into that. I think it was either Anna or somebody on your team sent me a list of all of the main ideas from the first 36 episodes.
38 episodes
of the podcast, and there's some really great things to
pick back up
in there too. Yeah, and that would be good in the context of this AI conversation too. That might be a good combination.
Yeah, because we've already introduced it with Cloudlandia. I mean, because that's where artificial intelligence will, is emerging from is Cloudlandia. And I think what it's doing is it's giving us this. I think humans really like having existential threats. I think it's a mind focuser. I think it clarifies things, and so. Samuel Johnson, Dr. Samuel Johnson, this is 1600s. He was the creator of the first English dictionary that became popular. Dr. Samuel Johnson, and he has a great quote. He said, "The prospect of the executioner in the morning powerfully sharpens the mind."
That's brilliant. Well said. That's a good ending note right there.
Yeah. Have a great week.
You too, Dan.
I think we're on again next Sunday.
Love it. Always enjoy it. Look forward to it.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, bye.